In today's tech-driven world, APIs, or application programming interfaces, are everywhere. APIs connect different pieces of software, allowing them to communicate and share information. There's a good chance you've interacted with APIs if you have a phone or computer without even realizing it. But what are APIs and how do we test them? Hey there, if you're new, my name is the Test Lead, and I make content to help you on your software testing journey, so make sure you subscribe. Today's topic, what's an API and how do we test them? Starting off, what's an API? I said before, an API is a way for two pieces of software to communicate and interact with each other. But by the book, an API is a set of rules that lets two systems communicate. Me personally, I'm more of a visual learner and like to use analogies to remember things. So for APIs, imagine I'm walking into your favorite restaurant, Red Lobster. So I go get a nice comfy seat and the waiter asks, what do I want to order? And I tell the waiter, let me get your endless shrimp. The waiter receives information as a request and takes this request, my order, and gives it to the kitchen and a chef in the back. The chef in the back receives my request for endless shrimp. They're probably a little mad. It's going to be a long night for them. After receiving my request, they make my first batch of shrimp. Once my shrimp is made, they cook it up. Cool. Give it back to the waiter. The waiter brings it out and tells you, here's what you ordered. In this situation, the waiter is an API. I gave information to the API to communicate to the chef in the kitchen. The waiter gave my order to the chef in the kitchen. The chef acknowledged that they received my request and then gave me back the food I requested. That's the same way an API works. One piece of software sends information to another piece of software. Once that second piece of software receives the information, they could just say, okay, received it, or they can send back more information back to the original piece of software. So remember, the waiter taking my order and bringing back my food, the same thing that an API does. So think of an API as a waiter in your favorite restaurant. Some examples of APIs that you probably know are the weather application. Many of us on our phone have weather applications where we check the weather for today. We're making a request to see today's weather. The API goes to the background of weather.com or whatever website. They then bring back the response of what today's weather is. The same thing with Twitter or Instagram. Whenever we retrieve any data or see new posts or even post a new tweet or picture on Instagram, those all use APIs. Quick break. If you're enjoying the video so far, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you need help on your software testing journey, check out my website, thetestinglead.com. Now, back to the video. So now you have a high-level understanding of APIs. Now let's dive into how API testing works. Normally, with software testing, people mainly focus on UI testing or front-end testing, or testing what the customers or users see on a website. API testing involves testing what happens in the background. When a customer presses the Add to Cart button, that triggers an API in the background. So you have to make sure that when that API is triggered, it actually behaves as expected. Because a company could have the best looking website, but if it doesn't function correctly, when you press that button to submit your order, if that button doesn't work, because there's an API broken in the background, then what good is having that beautiful website? Which is why it's important to test both the front end and the back end, which involves APIs. When testing an API, you're mainly checking if it correctly handles request, sending data or asking for information, responses, receiving the correct data or information, errors, handling wrong inputs or server issues. There are two main ways of testing APIs. You can create automated API tests or use tools like Postman. We'll start with briefly talking about testing with Postman. Postman is one of the most popular tools for API testing. It's user-friendly and doesn't require you to write any code. And it's free. I have tons of videos already covering Postman, and I'll be creating some new updated ones pretty soon. So for right now, we're not going to dive too deep into Postman. Next, we have automated API tests. No matter what coding or programming language that you use, you can create API tests with them. Here's a simple example using Python. In this example, we define our URL or the website that has our API. We then use request.get to send a request to the API. We then print the status code from our request. And last but not least, we print the response data. I'll be making more videos very soon about how to do automated API testing using Python, Java, and other programming languages. That way, you can add that to your repertoire. But now you might be thinking, well, which is best for API testing? If you're just starting out, use Postman. It's beginner friendly, it's easy to use. You can use it right after this. If you're a little more experienced, I would still start with Postman to become familiar with APIs. Then you could jump into actually automated API testing. Once you do that, you get more flexibility with your test. Along with API testing, you have to consider HTTP methods as well as HTTP status codes. Here are quick examples, but I'll create future videos diving deeper into this topic.